What's up? So I'm gonna get started here. I almost canceled today. I just got back into my office a few minutes ago, and I meant to actually prepare because last time I ran into a few issues, and rather than, whoops, sorry, this isn't muted. Rather than fumble around and try to figure things out while everyone's watching me, I thought that I would kind of investigate a little, still solve them with everyone watching. I don't want to hide anything, but I meant to investigate a little and I didn't. So we'll see what happens. One thing I did do is I added the Airtable, the action where you pull the category list in. So my plan at the very least is I'll pull that category list in and I'll make the search bar search by title, by software name. I can do that at least. And if I don't feel like going any further, maybe I'll just call it there, so maybe it'll be like a half session. Or if I'm feeling good and the ball's rolling, I'll keep going. For now though, I guess I'm just gonna jump in. I didn't send out the email announcement or tweet this before I went because I just right up into the end wasn't sure if I was gonna do it. So whatever. If people remember, they'll see it, and if not, they can watch the recap later. So let's start. If you remember, so I haven't changed anything. I added that the action I need into this project, but I didn't actually use it or try to use it yet. So with any luck, it'll work. But I'm gonna do that first, which the idea is I'm gonna populate this category name list here with the real category names. So right now I have some dummy info into the categories, but websites, blockchain, data and database is one, integrations is another. These are all categories that I want to be able to filter by. So normally, I'd have to figure some way to pull these values out and remove the duplicates and make that. But instead, with this Airtable pattern and builder, it's just a one action thing. So let's give it a shot. So the stuff I have in here now I can keep, but if you remember, I hard coded some dummy data in the properties of this list of rows here. So there's dummy data in the studio and in the studio, and then dummy data when they view it live. We don't need this in here at all when they view it live, but I don't need to remove it right this second. I might put something in there as a placeholder for each one or do something different. I don't know. For now, we don't need it. I'll just remove it. We probably don't need it at all. So that just means if we didn't do anything else, nothing would show up here for categories. Okay, so let's try this action. The way that this works is it's the action itself doesn't call Airtable or anything like that. The action itself will look into this element, which is a list of cards element, and it'll look into the data for each of these cards and pull the information we need. So I don't need to do an additional API call or anything like that. This is all just client-end JavaScript, client-side JavaScript. So what I'll do is right now, just to give you a refresher, the Airtable data is pulling into this list of cards here, and each row populates one card. But we have a setup because Airtable will only return 100 records at a time. We have a setup in here where we pull 100 records, then we check if that's the end. If it's not, we pull 100 more, then we check if it's the end. If it's not, etc. And so what I'm actually going to do, I want to wait and I want to make sure every single card is loaded in before I make these categories, before I list the categories. If I just did the first 100 records and ran this category action, we would only see categories from the first 100. So the way that it's set up here, I can actually add an action anywhere I want in Builder. So there's a couple ways to approach this, but the way this is set up, I have this Airtable action running, then I have a condition, and I check if there's an offset value, which means there's more records to return. So if the offset value doesn't equal nothing, then I run this action again, which is actually the same action, get Airtable data. This, what I'm going to add an action if false, which means it's going to run through, if it gets the first 100, and then it does this condition, and it says, okay, there is another set of records. So it'll run this again, it'll get the next 100, then it'll do this condition, it'll say, okay, there is another one, so it'll run again. Now that it's gotten 300 records, It's going to do this condition. It's going to say, okay, there's no more records. And so at that point, when this condition is false, that's where I want to set an action to create the categories. But first I need to create that as an action group. So this, I'll actually call it create categories. What it's doing is it's creating a list from another list data. Like there's a more technical thing it's doing, but in the context of Airtable and in the context of no code list, I'm creating these categories. And so the action itself is an Airtable, like I said, pulled in from the Airtable pattern that I built. So it's this Airtable get filter options and set into element. What we're actually doing is we're getting the filter options we need from this element, which has data from Airtable, and we're setting them into this element, which is going to be our list. So the first thing we'll do is we'll choose the element where we have the Airtable data. And this doesn't have to be an element. So I could actually query to Airtable and save it as a variable where I'm not outputting it and still use the variable here. But the average use case, or like the 9 times out of 10 use case, you'll be putting the Airtable data into an element to view it. And so in this case, I'm going to pull the data from that element directly. The other reason that's good is because when we're doing this 100 call thing, I know that this element has all the data from all the calls. It's not just one of them set in a variable. So element on the current page, which is correct. And then I'm going to select the list of cards main software list. And so that's the initial data to get. And then the field that I'm going to use as the filter is called categories. And I know that from Airtable, this field name here is categories. And there's a one-to-one relationship with Airtable. So I know it's categories that I want to use. And then the element to set into is the list of rows here. And actually what I can do to be more clear, this is always a great idea. This list of rows, instead of calling it a generic name, it's list of rows categories. And so now over here, didn't update. Just so you can see it update. List of rows categories, and I select that. So I take it from the list of cards software list, find the field categories, and output a list of those categories into the list of rows here. And in the process, it's removing duplicates, and I think it puts it in alphabetical order, which you can edit actually in the function itself. You can change that kind of stuff. So I think that should be it as far as the actual function, creating the function. And then the last step is on this get Airtable conditional, like I was saying. When it's true, we grab more data, but when it's false, we create the categories. And so if I run this now, in theory, it'll work. Like I said, I haven't tested. And after last week, where not a lot seemed to be going right, who knows? But I'm hoping this will work. Looks like it didn't. I'll give it a second. And what I can do is, well, one thing I'll do just to be sure that I'm all up to date is I'll just clear out any cached values or local site stuff. And then if it doesn't work, what I can do, well, actually, what's the best way to debug this? So what I normally do in this situation is I go into, I run this in the live view in the actual browser, and then I go into the console and I know all these little hooks, all these debug hooks. I know things I can type to find which variables are set. I know things I can type to break on each step of an action. So there's a lot of other stuff that I do. I don't really want to do that on this live stream because it's not, well, technically everyone has access to it, but it's not stuff that has a UI built around it in Builder. So it's almost like cheating in a way. But long term, that all that stuff will be made in a UI. There'll be like full debug where you can do all this stuff on your own. So I kind of wanted to stay away from getting that level. And in this case, I feel like what I would want to do is I would grab this action here and I would step through each step and see what's happening. And you know what? Actually, now that I'm talking about it, let's just do it. Whoops. And the reason I'm going to just do it, I'll just check really quickly if I can see something quickly going wrong, but I actually won't. Like normally, I would just keep doing this and figure it out. I won't go that far. So what I can do the way that I set this up is not really that important. Like you don't need to try to remember it because it's so much. Sorry, this is small. I can't see it. There we go. But this is something that is built like, you know, this isn't default, and you know, this is part of Builder that's built, but it's just not exposed yet. And there's actually a lot of things like that, which is kind of cool. And so you can see I'm just staring at code here. I know somewhere around here is the line I want, and it's basically just looking for the line I want. And then I'm going to add a breakpoint, and I have the stuff I need actually like saved here because it's just so much to remember. That's why I wasn't going to go through this, because I feel like I wouldn't want to tell you to do this. So if I set that, what I actually did was I told it when it runs this action to break at each step, to pause at each step and show me what's going on. And so if I refresh the page and wait, once it loads in all 3 API calls, because it's 300 records, so it's 3 API calls. Oh, and so you can see like it never even ran that action, so that's interesting. Oh, it didn't finish loading it either. Once I see the header pop in here, I'll know it's loaded. It's actually strange how long it's taking to load. I don't know what's going on. Okay, there that goes. And I didn't see a break, so I'm thinking that action actually never ran. Unless I just set this up wrong. I'll try it without these really quick, actually. Now that I think about it. Sorry for the delay. It actually takes longer to load things up. I noticed when I'm debugging and I have all these sources and network up, it would probably be faster if I close that, but then it wouldn't break on this action. Yes, that's interesting. It's not running the action at all. Let's see. Well, I have it set here. All right, so I won't waste too much more time on this. I got to look into it. What the one problem, or the one thing that makes this tricky, is I went into the Airtable pattern and like manually pulled this action into this project. Normally you'd re-import as a pattern and all this stuff, but I didn't even have it published, so I kind of took a shortcut. So there could be too much wrong that I don't want to go too far, but just like last time, I think it's just continuing that streak, but that's okay. For now, I'll just move on from that. I'm going to investigate that in the meantime, so I know how to fix it for the next live stream. But I'll do something that hopefully will be easier next. And then I think I'll just kind of call it a day after that. It's like do like a half session, maybe it'll be like a half hour. And then as a reminder, I won't be doing this on Friday, but I'll be back on Monday of next week. So shifting gears. Unfortunately, I feel like I really just want to go back to that, but I won't. I don't want to be boring. So shifting gears. In the beginning, I think maybe the first day, I just randomly dropped this search bar here because it's there on the live site. And you can search for tools. Right now, you search by the actual name of the tool only. And in no-code list, this rebuild, I'm going to make that much more robust. But for now, let's start it with just name only. And what I'll do is I'm going to use something built into Builder. You can filter a grid, or you can search a grid, which this list of cards is a grid, by any text. And it's a built-in action that applies to grids. So these grids behind the scenes are written in JSON. They have key value pairs. And so because Builder knows that, you can do a lot of cool stuff with them without having to worry about how it works. So one of the things we can do is I can create an action that's called, right now I'm just going to call it search by tool name. We'll switch that later, but that's actually what it is right now. And there's an action called grid search grid value. So the grid element itself is this list of cards. So I select that. The value that I would be looking for in this case, I'm creating the action now. So the value that I'll be looking for is going to trigger all the time. Like whenever someone searches, I'm going to pull the value out of this input field. So instead of text here, remember I can do from element, from variable, from data. I can do all these different things. I'm going to come from element in this case. And the element is going to be the search input value. So what that means is it's going to search the list of cards for whatever value is in here. So if I type Airtable in here, it's going to search for Airtable in there. And then the last thing, search key. If you're using a builder data collection and you want to just search on one key, so say it like in this case, this is tools or the name of the tool. I could search by the field, the actual column in the data, only that field, tool or title would probably be called, or name, if I wanted to. Or I could search by everything by leaving this blank or writing star. Or if I have, in my case, since I don't have a data collection, I have Airtable data, I could just type in text for a field here, you know, so I think it's called name in mine. So I want to do just the name field here. A lot of times in this, for this, I would leave a blank. And the reason in this case, if I left a blank, it would search every field. So it's kind of cool because maybe one of these tools has a name that's doesn't say what it does, but in the description, it does say what it does. So someone searches for a website builder. If it's in the description, it can find it also. And to do that, I would just leave this blank and it would search across all the values. For now, I'm going to be explicit just because I'm going to do name only, and I called it by tool name, and I know I'm going to expand on it later. But basically, that's all we need. What that'll do is that'll actually hide the grid rows here that don't meet the search criteria. But if you clear this out or if you search again, then it'll, you know, it remembers the original data. So it's a really cool shortcut to kind of like normal kind of filtering. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to fire this action. So I create this search tool by name action. And for now, I'm going to fire it when anything in this, basically when you type in this field, I'm going to fire it. And I probably will change that later too. But for now, I'm just going to do that so we can see it and it'll like look cool and update real time. So I'm on the search input element, and I go to events here, and I can say, so on change isn't actually on each key press. That would be like if you change the value and, you know, defocus or leave the element. But there are some like key down, key press, and key up. And these are all key, you know, actual, when you press a key, things that happen. And so I'm going to actually search anytime there's a key up element. And so on key up, I can run the action search by tool name. So now on this element, anytime a key is pressed, when it's let go, technically key up, it'll run the search. And while I'm here, something cool to note is that these actions, these key-based actions, you can actually, instead of doing any key, you can add a key code. Why is it not popping up? And if you add a key code, you choose which key, and you can choose any key. So like enter is actually carriage return, or like backspace or delete, or any of these keys, right? So I could, for instance, right now I'm making it search anytime someone presses a key. I could say only search when they press enter. That's carriage return. Or what's kind of extra cool, and this is all just a side note, I'm not going to use this right now, but what's extra cool is that in Builder, you can say while pressing a key, like lowercase e, and holding shift or something like that. You can set up some pretty cool, you can set up some pretty cool key code actions and some like shortcut keys, that kind of thing. But for now, I'm not doing any of that. For now, I'm saying any key, run anytime you press a key in the search bar, run the search by tool name. And I think we can test it now. We'll see how it goes. It was a rough, the first task we did was rough, but I think this one is more straightforward, so I'm hopeful. But let's see. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I just did this whole thing without showing my screen. That's cool. It's been one of those days for me, to be honest. Oh my gosh. No problem though, because the first thing I did not work at all. I was like, I pulled in a custom action in a weird way to shortcut so I could do it for this demo, and then it just didn't fire. And then I debugged on it and nothing was firing, so I skipped it. So all's well that doesn't matter. For now, the things I just did, I'll just go quickly back through. I don't even want to waste too much time. Like I said, I'm going to call this early. But what I just did is I was messing with this search bar here to make it filter this list of cards. So grid search by value is a built-in builder action. And I created an action group to search by tool name. I added grid search by value. I selected the grid that I want to search, and the search actually searches and then hides the items, the rows that don't apply. I selected the value, which I'm pulling whatever they have typed in this input is going to be the value that I search for. And then I selected a key, which is name, and that came from this column name here. And so all that culminates to this where I can test it. I set this to a key action to key up. So anytime you press a key in this search field, it should run the search. So you can see it is working. The first thing that's worked in 2 live stream sessions. So that's pretty cool. Well, Builder's not on the list yet. We're not live. But yeah. So you can see just it works. And the other thing is there's this X here. And so because Builder is non-opinionated and is just letting you do, code things without writing code, if I press X on this, it doesn't clear. And the reason is there's no key up. Like it didn't fire that actual search. And that's just like a small quirk that I know that you'd figure out, if you tested it. But what I do sometimes, like depending on the situation, that X is an actual, it's related to an event called search. So I usually just add this search event, which basically means anytime they search, and I don't even know the real definition of what's included in that. It's like an HTML or a JavaScript thing. But I know that if you have it on search and you hit that X, it triggers the action. So I'll just double check and make sure. There we go. And so that's like a pretty straightforward way to search. What I'm going to do long term for this no code list is actually do a little, I'm going to, as a kind of a bonus, I'm going to have these fade out and fade in or do something, maybe shift around. So I might want to do more, but I use this all the time for stuff when I want to do searches. And like I'll do something similar to this for the categories when they're there and you're clicking on the filters, something similar. So that works. The only other thing maybe I'll do before I stop, just because I don't want to go, I didn't really look into any of those other issues or anything yet, but we can style this because it does bother me that it's this random white box on the screen. And so I'll style it just like this one for now, probably, but I think I'll change how this looks. And if you notice, this doesn't even have a search button. What this one does, which is extra weird, I was just being weird when I made it, is if you press enter, it'll search, but also if you press a key and then don't press anything for, I think 3 seconds or 1 second or something, then it'll run a search. So if you're typing and you're like halfway through and you think like, how do I spell that? It'll actually like trigger the search. It's kind of actually cool, but it's also not good UI because there's no search button at all. Okay, so for this, looks like I've got something weird with an H2 to put that magnifying glass. Like I don't know if I'll do that same way or not either. But first on this input itself, I'll try to grab some styles. The most important things I see on here, there's a lot of styles, but like I'm not gonna make the background be the color of the background. I'm not sure why it's explicitly set. Like I don't actually want that. I'll just have it be clear, transparent. And like I can reset the border radius and whatever, but this border bottom, take the color, and then padding, just 0 on the top and bottom, 1M on the sides. That's what that means. So I'll just keep those for now. Oops. So I don't believe I have anything on here as far as styles. So there's an input default class, which is going to give it these styles: font family size, a width, a min height, a border, and I think that includes actually a hover style too. Yeah. I think that I'm going to remove all this. So I'll do that. And this is, I'm going to call this a new primary class for search input. And the reason is there might be other inputs, or maybe I'll call it like input dash search. So there's other ways that I'll style inputs that are more consistent across the site. This one, I know it's like this one special search case and maybe things will be different. So I'm just going to separate it now. And that's just kind of an experience thing. If I didn't know that, I would create it the same. And when I hit another one later, I'd be like, ooh, I need to copy that class and split them off. It'd be no big deal. So I remember there was a border. So here's a couple things. One thing is I removed that class and you can see what it looks like now is default HTML styles of an input, right? And so this actually has CSS, has a white background, has a border, when you has that outline or whatever that is when you focus in. So the first thing is I'll actually remove that in here. So I'll say border none, outline none. I'm going to add that outline back actually. Or use something for it because it is really important for accessibility to show when people are selected on inputs. Like a lot of designers get really minimal with inputs and it looks really good from a design perspective, but usability wise, you know, as something that you need to use and especially as something for, well, any disability, but like screen readers and other things where it's not like a human's eye who cares about the design looking at it. I think it's really important to do all these little things like, you know, showing some type of focus state and all that stuff. So I will put that back in, but right now I'm clearing stuff out. So I did border, outline, background. There's no fonts or anything by default, I don't think on here. So I think this should be good. So border and outline, I'm just going to set them to 0. I mean, they're set to none already. Same difference. Background, I'm going to actually write transparent. I could write inherit there, which would inherit its parents or something, but anything to overwrite that default HTML style. And so just to double check, that's here now. Okay, so that's basically just cleared. And so now if I add in, there was a border bottom, I remember, one pixel, and it was solid, which is like kind of, you know, means a line. And it was this color. There was padding of 0 on the top and the bottom, and 1 M on the sides. Okay. The placeholder says search for tools. So right now it says enter value. I'm actually go into the properties of this input and say search for tools. So we should be getting closer here. And so it looks like I have, let's see how I do it on here. Oh, okay. So there's just space on the side, but that's fine. And it looks like maybe line height or something is different in here because I see space under the words and I see no space under the words. So it could be something like line height. It could also be, these are side by side. It could be that they're in like a flex box that's stretching them full height. There's a lot of different, there's never just one property that affects what you're seeing. That's pretty much what it comes down to. So there's a lot of different ways that this could be working. So I'm just going to check some of these properties. Oh, I see. I have a height on all these different inputs of 2.75 M, which actually made it shorter, but I bet somewhere out here there's a different height set. So I don't know if I'll keep that, but for now I'll put that in and see if it makes it look more the same. Height, and then I think I said 2.75 M. Closer at least. Solid. And then this space that's under here it's probably space like above this or something. Like it's probably not just from that input. So I'm guessing there won't be anything for us there. I did like a really cool trick where you just add in a p tag with a non-breaking space, NBSP. That's kind of a funny hack, but I actually do that a lot. Sorry to admit. I feel like people wouldn't like that I admit that, but I do that sometimes. And actually it works really well because all my stuff's set in M's and Rems like on the base tag usually. So it's like, it actually always looks pretty good. Okay, anyway, I'll add that space in. I'll probably put this space as like some margin top on this whole container maybe. I can do it now. So the way that I did this before is a P tag, and the P tag has like a custom margin here on it of 2M on the bottom only. So essentially I kind of know, like this might not be exact, but I know that the P itself, which is in blue here, that's like 1M, and then that orangey color under it is the margin. That I know that's 2M. So I'd say it's about 3M is the margin I want. And I might, yeah, I'll keep it M actually. M is relative to, the container that it's in, sort of. So it's like it would be relative to this container, but I don't think the font size is going to change here. So actually, I could put it on the section main. Remember, I have each block as a section. I could put it on the internal container too, or I can put it on the container for the actual grid here that has categories on one and no code software list on the other. I'm just going to slap it on here. And for now, because it doesn't even have a class or anything, I'm just going to put it here like this. And I mentioned last time, but I do go in for these kind of things. Anywhere they need to be cleaned up, I go in and I move them off of inline styles into a class. And if I know it's going to be a class, I'll start with a class. But sometimes to be quick, I just write them inline and move them in later. And that comes into play 100% for responsive, because you can't do responsive with inline. So what would probably happen if I didn't need to move these, like if these were never going to change, there's no reason I can't keep them inline. I mean, there's some reason for best practices, and you want your code to be easily editable in the future and stuff, but there's no real technical reason I couldn't. And so I might keep it like that and forget all about it. And then when I shrink this down at a phone size and that gap looks a little big and I say, I want to change that margin top when it's small, that's where I'd have to pull these into a class so that I could do responsive on them. But right now I don't need to. Right now I set that and it worked. I can see that space there. So you can see it's already, just little tiny spacing and tweaks. Like this is all the wrong font. Like this is the wrong font size. The fonts are different. But you can see it's starting to look very close. And I don't need to do too much more as far as like those like if I actually did set the font and the base sizes, which I haven't done yet, I feel like it would be like so close. It would be almost exact, and it would look really done. So it's pretty cool. It's not too hard to spin some of this stuff up. I mean, this one is already designed, so I'm not really making too many decisions on there. But yeah, it's really rewarding, at least for me, kind of. I don't want to call it like a hack or whatever, but like a little tool I use is something like this, where I just styled that input for no reason. For me anyway, it goes a long way, because now when I look at this, I'm starting to get excited and I'm like, okay, this is motivating to build. Whereas when everything looked hodgepodge, like last session or the beginning of this one even, it's not so motivating. I'm like, oh, there's so much to go. This looks so far off. Like, whereas, change two things and I'm like, ooh, this is getting there. So it's cool. It's kind of like I don't know what you call that. It's not really a hack, like a brain hack. But it's cool to do that sometimes, especially if you're visual. I mean, I know not every programmer is visual. And I know, like, I've known even some of my former employees who just have different views on, like, when to make things really nice and designy. But my opinion, I need things to look good. So I love doing just a little bit of polish while I'm working. And I think it goes a long way for me. Okay, I think I might stop, to be honest. I don't want to do too much more, and it was kind of a low-key day. I didn't show my screen for half of it anyway. I feel like it's smart to quit while I'm ahead. That last thing worked. What I need to do is I need to choose how I'm going to put that magnifying glass in, because on the real site, it's like an H2 here and side by side, and not for any specific reason, but I just think that's weird. So I might put that in. I might even keep it as a placeholder or do something different with it. But I'll do that, and then maybe next time I can set those fonts like I was talking about, so we're a lot closer. And then I'll need to look into a few things that didn't work before. Like, well, the one thing that didn't work today is listing these categories. Another thing, there was an issue with the sizing where these weren't responding to get small. The font I can fix. I'm pretty sure I know why that's happening, so that'll be easy. There were like 3 other things. So that'll be for next time, which again, it will not be Friday, but it will be Monday. And I'll send out an email. I didn't do any reminders because I almost didn't do this one today, but I'll send out an email and do it right next time. And hopefully, if I can fix all those problems after that time, we're going to be in really good shape. I mean, I'm going to be building out a couple of the single pages, but we're going to be, 80 or 85% of the way done, I think. So looking forward to that. And thanks for watching. I think it's just you, Alex, just you and me watching. But that's cool. And I'll keep doing it anyway. And yeah, looking forward to next time where I can kind of make some more progress and feel a little better. I feel like I'm a little slow right now. I'm itching to get it, but we'll get it. We'll get there. All right. Thanks again, and later.